Carol Bowman is an American author, lecturer, counsellor and therapist, and is best known for her work in studying cases of reincarnation, especially involving young children. In late 1992, Carol Bowman put an ad in Mothering magazine where she was requesting information from parents who believed their children were talking about a past life. In January 1993, a couple of months after the ad came out, she received a call from a mother by the name of Hocken from the Midwest. Colleen related the story of her 3-year-old son Blake, who she felt was remembering a traumatic past life death. Back in July 1988, well-known American psychiatrist Brian Weiss wrote a book called Many Lives, Many Masters. The book was about past life therapy, which Colleen had read, and up to that point had never before thought about reincarnation and was fascinated by what Dr. Weiss had said about using past life therapy with his patients. In the book, he said that children sometimes tell their parents about experiencing a past life, but most parents think that children are making up fantasy stories. After reading the book, Colleen initially thought to herself, "My kids never say anything unusual." However, the following day, her son Blake was standing at the front door, watching his older brother Trevor wait for the school bus. At the time, his mother was in another room, and heard Blake scream out to his brother, "Get out of the street, the bus is coming." She then rushed to the front door to ensure Trevor was all right, and found Blake standing at the door with his hand to his left ear, saying, "My ear hurts." She asked Blake why his ear hurt, and he said, "A truck hit me." His mother assumed that a child in play school had hit him with a toy truck, and asked him, "Well, who hit you with the toy truck?" He replied, "A man did." His mother asked, "A man hit you with a toy truck?" "No," he insisted, "a big truck." His mother asked, "A big truck like the ones driving down the street?" "Yes," said Blake. Now confused, his mother asked, "Where were you when you were hit?" Blake replied, "In the street." It was at this point that Colleen had thought back to what Dr. Weiss had written about reincarnation. She said she did not want to dismiss what her son was saying, and was really curious as to what he was trying to tell her. But she didn't want to put words into his mouth either, so she asked him, "And then what happened?" He explained in detail how the truck had hit him. She asked, "Where did you get hurt?" And he said, "All over. I went under the wheels," and he then made sweeping motions with his arms over his left side, showing how the wheels of the truck had run over him. As he was talking, his mother could see the pain on his face as he showed how badly he was hurt. She asked, "And then what happened?" "The man put me in the truck and took me to a school." His mother figured that any large building was a school for a 3-year-old son, and she interpreted this as meaning that he'd been taken to a hospital. She asked, "And where was your mother and father when this was happening?" He said, "Bye-bye at the store." His mother's mind was racing at this stage, trying to find an explanation as to what her son was telling her. Her first thought was that he was imagining everything, but then thought, how could a 3-year-old visualize a truck's wheels running over his body, and he described it in such detail? Still searching for a rational explanation, she thought that maybe he'd seen something similar on TV that his older brother had been watching while she was out of the room. She asked Blake whether he had seen it on TV, and he replied in an irritating manner, "No, it happened in the street." She then asked, "Did you die?" "Yes," he said, but in a very casual tone. Colleen told Carol Bowman how amazing it was to hear her son describe the incident in such a matter-of-fact manner, as if she should already have known about it. At no stage did he indicate that he was joking or making it up. His mother said, if anything, her son was rather irritated with her for asking such stupid questions. Nothing further was mentioned about the incident until a week later, when a large garbage truck passed by the house, where Blake told his mother that it was like the truck that hit me. At this point, his mother decided not to ask her son anything more about the incident, hoping that he'd forget about it. However, even though Blake's mother decided to stay quiet about the accident, something had been triggered in Blake, where he became depressed, and over the preceding months, his depression became severe. At first, his mother didn't notice any change, but then he suddenly stopped playing, and his normally cheerful nature and sense of humour disappeared. Colleen would often come into their living room and see Blake staring blankly at the TV or just gazing out of the window at nothing in particular. His personality had now changed, and the normally happy child had become morose. His mother was now deeply concerned and guilty about his demeanour, and it didn't help matters when he could not have full attention, as she also had 2 other children to look after, a 1-year-old baby and his older brother Trevor, who was 6 years old. As Blake was the middle child, maybe he was play-acting to get her attention. She was also reticent about discussing his problems with family and friends, fearing they would blame her for being a bad mother. Something was very puzzling about her son's behaviour and change in personality that she did not understand. When she had a spare moment, she would try to cheer him up or play his favourite music, which he initially responded to by dancing, but after a short while would sit back on the sofa and just stare into space. One day Blake was watching his favourite show called Mr. Rogers, where there were many balloons. Blake loved balloons, so his mother encouraged him by saying, "Aren't balloons fun?" Unfortunately, he looked at her with a blank stare and said, "No, balloons are bad." She was now seriously concerned, as everything she tried to cheer him up, from reading to playing with puzzles, led to a negative response, and he started telling her to go away. Blake was also starting to get physical symptoms, where every day he complained that his arm hurt, or his leg or eye hurt, and was always on the left side of his body. Whenever his mother tried to comfort him, he would tell her to go away. She thought if he couldn't tell her directly what was troubling him, maybe he could show her his problems through pictures. Blake would then scribble some lines and various marks on a piece of paper and say, "These are my ouches." She then tried to hug him, saying, "Maybe I can help you. You know Mummy loves you very much." And he responded emphatically, saying, "I love you, then I hate you." Colleen said to Carol Bowman, "He seemed to love me and hate me at the same time, and he didn't know why, and neither did she." She thought about therapy, but doubted that a therapist could help, and somehow blamed herself for his condition. She also feared that her husband might blame her too. 3 months later, when the family went overseas to London for Christmas, a frightening incident gave her a clue to the possible cause of her son's sudden change in personality. As it was Christmas, London was very busy with shoppers, and as they were waiting on a centre island in the middle of the road, a policewoman on traffic duty blew a whistle for pedestrians to stop. The people were all squashed together on the pavement and were unable to move. As Blake was sitting in the stroller, which was at the edge of the curb, a large truck suddenly came around the corner, and Blake jumped out of his stroller and into the path of the oncoming truck. His mother screamed to get back, but he stood frozen on the spot. She screamed out to Blake to get back, but he just stood there, as if he were frozen. She couldn't grab him because she was behind the stroller. Fortunately, her husband quickly grabbed him and pulled him to safety. The truck driver slammed on his brakes, got out of the truck, and yelled at them for not watching their child. She then wondered whether Blake's depression had anything to do with what he'd told her a few months earlier about being hit by a truck. Did it mean that Blake has to repeat the experience again? And she was terrified that her son might try again to try and run under a moving truck, and thought his behaviour was potentially dangerous and he needed immediate attention. Was her son's actions in London really due to a past life memory? Carol Bowman did not want to recommend a traditional therapist, as she truly believed that Blake's problems were the result of a past life trauma, and that most therapists would not know how to treat a past life memory. Instead, Carol suggested she talk to Blake about the truck accident, but wait till he was in a relaxed state before bedtime. Colleen took her advice and just before bedtime said, "Blake, you were hit by a truck, right?" And he replied, "Yes." And then she said, "But that was a different life, and you were in a different body, and you had a different mummy." Suddenly, her son's face lit up, and he said, "A different mummy," and seemed genuinely surprised. She said to him, "Yes, and now you're safe." She then told him all the people in her present life, from his brothers to his relatives, which he instantly comprehended. From that moment, the depression and gloom lifted from Blake, and the following day he was back to his previous cheerful self before he started remembering the accident. His aches and pains that he'd been complaining about on the left side of his body vanished. Colleen Hocken had got her son back.